We have several exciting things coming to Overwatch. As far as rough estimates go, one large feature will be announced somewhere in the time frame between soon and really soon. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is from Aaron Keller, the game director. All right, guys, welcome to the channel. I'm Stylosis. So, yes, it is another AMA we are going to go over. Now, I suggest you get a drink because it's going to be a long one. Sit back, stick this on another monitor. I don't know, do something with it because it's going to be a long video. There are a lot of questions here that have been answered, and there are some really juicy bits of information. Things like, have you considered adding a ping system into the game? And the answer to this by Alan Keller was, we definitely considered this. In fact, we have a prototype of it running internally right now. We don't make a habit of promising things to players until they're actually announced, and I'm not going to break that tradition right now. I'm sure I'll blow it at some point in this AMA, but it is something we are excited about as a team and are working through issues currently. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, that basically means they are working on the system. They wouldn't talk about it if they weren't working on it. He says they're working on it. This is probably going to be something we see added to either Overwatch or added to Overwatch 2. Yeah, we need a ping system, I think. Every modern game has a ping system. If you guys play Apex Legends, the power of a ping system is so good. I know it's a different game. I know the maps are bigger. I know there's only 2 other people in your squad in Apex. But being able to ping you, I mean, you think of it this way, right? If you see a Widow, or no, maybe not even a Widow, let's say you're getting flanked by a Tracer and you want to let your team know, you could ping some sort of a flank thing behind to the side, and then at least your supports will know, oh my god, maybe somebody's there. Because you know what? Communication is part of Overwatch, so giving you more tools, allowing you to communicate in the game is great. Because not everybody wants to use the voice, right? Some people get anxious and nervous about using voice, and I totally get it. I mean, I'm the other end of the spectrum. I'd use the voice all the time. However, every time I do use the voice in Overwatch, it's that Stylosis. Now, that's not a bad thing, but it means that it can derail the game. And so for me, having a ping thing would be really damn good, and I'd use it a lot. But I think I would use it in conjunction with voice as well, because it's simply better. It puts a visual representation on the screen of what's happening in that area. Now, sure, people could abuse this and whatever, and hey, those things will happen. But I still think Overwatch would be a best game if it had a ping system. All right, then, let's get stuck into the rest of this AMA. Now, this was held over on the Overwatch Reddit. There are tons of answers here, tons of questions. It's probably going to be a beefy video, this. So like I said, sit back, relax. Let's get stuck into this. Loads of things are covered. New game mode is straight up teased by Aaron Keller. He just says the India and Gothenburg map. Hey, they're a new game mode, pretty much. Okay, that's awesome. I mean, that's completely unannounced. We don't know what the game mode is. Can't wait to see what that is. Loads of information on skins. Loads of stuff on competitive. Just everything. So let's do this. I'm going to give a shout out to Miko over at Overbuff for compiling this together. Basically saved me a lot of work, so thank you very much. I'm going to put a link to the video, well, in the video description below, to their post if you want to go and click that and check it out and see, basically read through it. But basically what I'm going to do is read through this, and we're going to react to what we see if we need to react. All right then. First up, we're going to start with some 5v5 questions. Will 222 role lock and open queue stay in the game as an option? 222 role queue will become 122 role queue due to the move to 5v5, and will probably still have open queue, but that's not set in stone yet since hero balance will be quite different in Overwatch 2. We might have an arcade card that still has 6-player teams in the future. We'll honestly have to evaluate all of them with an eye towards how they will work with the new hero balance, and that was from Scott Mercer. Will there be other game modes that are 6v6 for those who prefer it, and if it's possible to say which game modes? Honestly, we're not sure yet. We'd like to have it exist in some form, but I'd say balancing the game for both 5v5, 1 tank, and 6v6, 2 tanks isn't likely. So the 6v6 mode would most likely be an arcade mode or something like that if we can do it at all, and that's from Jeff Goodman. As an off-tank player in a 6-stack team, playing mostly scrims, small tournaments, and ranked, what can I legitimately expect for my Overwatch 2 experience? I would say a lot about Overwatch 2 is going to be different. The tank play will certainly change, but if you're an experienced off-tank player, I'm sure you'll find great success with those same heroes in Overwatch 2 as in solo tank. Jeff Goodman. Now again, I will come in here and just say, yeah, you know, there will be a lot of PR responses here. They straight up ignore questions on like release date, on monetization, and you know, all of the juicy stuff we want to know. They kind of wanted to just keep this to what's going on in Overwatch, what's happened in the past of Overwatch, and what's happening with competitive, and like maybe some minor system changes and stuff like that, and skins. So there's still a bunch of info in this, but we're not going to get a release date. All right, let's move on. What is one common misconception about the game, Overwatch 1, Overwatch 2, or anything else that you hear all the time from the community that you'd like to clear up? For me, in the short term, I'd say the biggest misconception I see about 5v5 and one tank being that off-tanks are being removed, changed, etc. But really, many off-tank heroes are getting tankier, and many main tank heroes are getting less tanky and more damage and options. So really, the new tanks are somewhere in between main tanks and off-tanks. If anything, I would guess that off-tanks would have an easier time adjusting to Overwatch 2's new tank role than main tank players. That's from Jeff Goodman. And that's slightly worrying, isn't it? Because if you're a main tank player right now, you main Reinhardt, Orisa, Winston, the actual game developer, designer, the hero designer, Jeff Goodman, is telling you it will be more difficult for you to fit into the role of tank because it's almost like a hybrid tank off-tank role. Whereas off-tank players right now, they'd be more flexible and more able to adapt. So that's an interesting thing to take note of. There's also a follow-up to this. Does that reflect a shift in the team's focus towards a product that competes more directly with other traditional FPS games? I would say overall, yes, there is a shift towards at least slightly more of a raw FPS game. However, tanks and supports and even some DPS like Doomfist have always been more about abilities than just aim skill and shooting. This isn't going to change. I feel like this is core to what makes Overwatch what it is, reflecting many different playstyles and empowering many different types of skilled players in different ways. It's always been a balancing act for us. But for a while, Overwatch 1's new hero additions, it was really starting to feel like we were pushing maybe a little too far away from our FPS roots. That's from Jeff Goodman. What will we ever do about the missing spawn interactions between tanks now that 5v5 is a thing? The tank spawn interactions are great. While they would still be available in modes that allow more than one tank, we've talked about it and haven't really come up with a way to preserve them in 5v5 modes. From Aaron Keller. I think most reason why people get upset on the 5v5 change is because of the tank synergy we have right now. Has the team thought about forgiving that in any way? By, I don't know, changing DPS maybe. One of the core goals of Overwatch hero design is to create these fun synergies and combos throughout the entire roster. It certainly sucks to lose some of these combos, but a lot of game design is making a call to decide if what you're gaining is worth what you're losing. In this case, after significant playtesting, we think it is more than worth it for the benefits we gain out of 5v5. And that was from Jeff Goodman. Should we expect loads of changes from what we have been shown on the stream in terms of tanks? I think we want to make sure we offer a lot of different options for different playstyles. As always, a broad answer, yes, tanks will be getting more brawly. But looking at heroes like D.Va, she is gaining much more matrix meter and she isn't losing her flight, knockback or anything else at the moment anyway. So she'll be even better at peeling than before. Even our current Zarya iteration allows her to potentially use two of her barriers back to back on an ally instead of shielding herself, which actually significantly increases her peeling potential as well. And that was from Jeff Goodman. I am worried people will flame tanks even more for every match they are not playing the perceived meta tanks. Is this something you have in mind when designing for 5v5? This is a good question. Talking about tanks in 5v5, it's unfortunate that tanks can often get the brunt of team negativity simply because they're in the front line leading the charge and their actions are easy to see by other members of the team. That spotlight is one of the reasons we often hear from people about not wanting to play tank. When a damage player has a bad game, and hey, it happens to everybody, it's often harder to notice. You're losing team fights, but you're not sure why. So, we're looking to give players some better tools in Overwatch 2 to look at game performance, including match history. We're also looking at further ways to celebrate positive plays made in a fight. I don't think we have a silver bullet to address every negative aspect of human behavior around competitive play, but we'll certainly try and help. And that's from Scott Mercer. Good answer there. So we might see some new, almost like, I don't want to say reward systems, but new feedback systems that might give us a better idea of how we're actually playing the game and what we're doing. That's really good. I like that. It's a good answer. Okay, so we're going to move on to a new topic now. This is on the idea of hero reworks. How is reduced CC for DPS going to affect someone like Doomfist and to a lesser extent, Wrecking Ball? This is something we're actually in the middle of testing right now. The idea to reduce crowd control, especially stun effects on non-tank heroes. This doesn't mean that tanks will gain more crowd control or that they will lose damage and focus on CC more. It's more that by removing the CC effects on existing non-tank heroes, it means that the current tank lineup would retain the majority of the CC effects as part of their role. This not only gives tanks something unique and interesting about their role, but significantly reduces the amount of CC effects in the game as a whole, especially in a world where there's only one tank per team. This isn't a hard rule either. Currently, we're pretty happy with Ana's Sleep Dart, for example, so I don't think we'd change it just to fit with this new paradigm. As for Doomfist and Hammond, well, Hammond is a tank hero, so I think that he has more CC effects. Doomfist is a hero we need to look at though, for other reasons as well. He can be frustrating to play against for other reasons. I'd say the more pressing matter for us is how powerful Doomfist and Hammond and other high mobility heroes such as Tracer can be in a world where there is a lot less crowd control to stop them. Jeff Goodman. Yeah, that's an interesting answer, that is. Is there a chance for Mei to become a tank so she can keep her freeze mechanic in some way? Possibly. That's still on the list to play around with. For what it's worth, she can still freeze with her ultimate. I would say freezing with her primary in PvE is a minimum of what you'll see. We have so many crazy ideas for talents for every hero. I can't wait to show you guys more as we get closer. Goodman. Are you happy with Lucio's boop? Yeah, we feel like it's pretty core to Lucio, so we're not likely to change this. Also, tanks have a role passive to have reduced knockback effects against them, so that helps tank players quite a bit. Goodman. So, if you mentioned this in the news blog that Bastion is going to be reworked from the ground up, are you able to share some things that you are trying with Bastion? When reapproaching Bastion, the biggest starting point is like, what is the core of this hero that feels like we should make sure to preserve? Our answer to that is he is a transforming robot with huge damage potential when he is using his various modes well. We want to make sure Bastion isn't purely about aim skill, but he also has a big focus on situational awareness and timing and positioning. We're looking at pushing his recon form's range out by changing his recon weapon. This helps him generally be more useful, but also helps create separation between his other forms, especially Sentry. For Sentry form, the cost of reducing his mobility to gain huge damage is still interesting and is at the heart of what makes him work. However, completely removing his mobility has proved to be too harsh of a penalty, and frankly, it's not realistically possible to balance him with the downside in mind, especially between different skill levels. So, right now, we're testing allowing him to move in Sentry form, but just more slowly than normal. This comes with new tuning for his Sentry weapon, of course, so it isn't quite as deadly as it is in Overwatch 1. There is more to talk about with him down the road, but we're still in the middle of reworking him, so hopefully we'll be able to show him off in more detail down the road. Goodman. That's a very interesting answer there, because there's a lot of things there which could change for Bastion. So a pretty heavy rework that is of Bastion. I mean, that's almost like Symmetra levels of rework from the first rework to the... How many reworks has Symmetra had? All right, let's do this. Have you considered moving some of the more crowd control focused DPS heroes into the tank role? I think the common one that comes up here is Mei, which is something we've talked about in the past, but we haven't run the Mei tank experiment internally yet. I feel like she would have to change quite a bit to fit the tank role, so it's a bit more of a rework to have her fit well into that role. That doesn't mean it's off the table, just that it's not a trivial change to throw in and out and try. If we did try it, I'm sure we'd try the ice slide that everyone loves to think about, and a smiley face. It certainly feels more acceptable on a tank, which would allow her to engage in front of her team, etc. Doomfist, I think, requires a bit more thought than even Mei. He is extremely unique, even amongst the Overwatch roster, but he essentially requires crowd control to control him, and he throws out a bit too much crowd control himself, even if he were a tank player. We haven't started digging into him yet, and we're still figuring out some of these CC changes are going to play out, but he's on my list to look at as soon as we can. Ideally, I'd love to keep his high mobility based gameplay intact, but be less frustrating to play against. Goodman. So again, talking about nerfing Doomfist, removing his crowd control ability, trying to keep him how he is, but not having him stun everyone and just beat the crap out of everyone. So that's going to be interesting. Can you share anything about some ideas you went through when it comes to Sombra's kit for Overwatch 2? For Overwatch 2, I've done some iteration on her in regards to how she might work in a world where there is less crowd control effects for damage heroes. Recently, we've run into 2 different playtest ideas for her. Number 1, she couldn't hack players at all anymore, but instead she gained a plus 50% damage bonus when shooting an enemy in the back. Number 2, she could hack players again, but a hack on an enemy just meant your allies could see that player through the walls instead of silencing them. She could also hack while invisible. She was visible while hacking, but invis wasn't broken. Then she gained a plus 30% damage bonus against hacked targets. That's interesting. That is funky. Okay. These were interesting tests, but each had their own share of big problems. For number 1, it felt weird and bad to just never be able to hack enemies. She's supposed to be this hacker, but her hack wasn't relegated to health packs mostly. This is potentially solvable if we had a lot more things she could hack, such as objectives and barriers, etc. But I'm not sure it's worth chasing it at this point. For number 2, it was super fun to hack people while in Viz and play more of a cat and mouse game more often. But her ult was terrible in this version without further changes to it. I'm unsure about this direction as well, as it sort of downplays her hacking in general. This is just an example of stuff we try when iterating on a hero and playtesting new ideas. Both of these ideas were in the camp of, what if she was more deadly, but we downplayed her hacking a bit, but there are other directions we could try as well. Goodman. So interesting there, like pretty much saying that they tried 2 tests and they didn't really work, and these are the reasons why. And we're going to take a look at some other stuff. So that's interesting. You know, I like that. The thing with Jeff Goodman is he will talk about Overwatch forever. And you'll notice a lot of these questions and answers are Jeff Goodman. He can type really fast as well. But he loves Overwatch and he knows everything about the game. And he's built all the heroes. He knows everything about the meta, the balance, everything. So he will talk about everything. And it's really good. Like, I think one of the best interviews I've ever done with an Overwatch developer is with Jeff Goodman. And it really pisses me off that that video didn't get a ton of views, because if it had Jeff Kaplan in, it would have got a ton of views. But Jeff Goodman, he's the man with the juice. So yeah. All right, let's move on. And if you guys want to check that out, it is from, if you just search for, I think I uploaded it after the Echo video I made, like the Echo ability video after I went to Irvine to check her out. Anyway, let's move on. Will the green overhealth still be removed by EMP? How do Brigitte and Torbjorn's temporary armor factor into that? Currently, no EMP does not remove overhealth, but hopefully, as evidence from some of my other answers, things are very heavily in flux right now, especially in regards to CC and Sombra, so it is possible we will make it work on all overhealth. Brig and Torb gain overhealth instead of over armor now, but it acts like normal health, so it doesn't have any innate damage reduction built into it anymore. We'll have to compensate for that as needed, probably by giving more health for them. Though I will go one step further and ask, should armor even work in the same way it does in Overwatch 1? It's fairly complex, and if you ask the average player how exactly armor works, most of them will say something like, oh, I don't know, it reduces damage taken somehow. We haven't changed anything with it yet, but it's on my list to look at and maybe simplify into something like armor health takes X% or minus X% damage. It has further implications if we do it like that. Like, bigger hits no longer feel like they are armor piercing, such as Widow Shot or Pharaoh Rocket, but maybe it's worth a trade-off. I'm just not sure yet. Goodman. How many Overwatch character redesigns you guys do at the same time? Assuming you mean the visual redesigns for Overwatch 2, we work on multiple at a time and have concepted most of the cast at this point. Arnold Sang. Of course, the lead, I think he's the lead, I don't want to get his title wrong, but he's basically, he designs most of the characters in the game. Like the lead art guy, let's say. Would giving DPS the role passive of dealing more damage to barriers work? That's an interesting idea, and how players interact with barriers is something we're always looking at closely. This might not be as required with the new 5v5 teams that only have one tank, and therefore less barriers on the field. We'll keep an eye on it as we continue to work on hero gameplay and balance. Goodman. Okay, so let's move on to the workshop now and take a look at some of the answers that were given to workshop related questions. Will we ever be able to use custom assets in the workshop mode? Custom maps would go far, but also custom models for making your own hero. Aaron would love it if we could get this in. Unfortunately, that's a really complicated problem for us given how our asset system works. We've tried and we will continue to try to expand the workshop as much as we can to extend custom creation as far as possible. But custom assets is a massive challenge. It's been something we've wanted to give to the community for years, and it's up now to up to now, there we go. Words are difficult. We just haven't found the right way to deliver it without an unrealistic investment of resources. Okay, so something they want to do, but something that's going to take a lot of time. And is it worth doing? Because they could be doing other stuff. Okay. Any new workshop content in the works? Customizable maps, spawnable shields, spawnable turrets. We are working on something super cool in this space. Not exactly what you called out, but I'm pretty excited about it. We're not ready to announce it yet, but I thought I'd drop a reply here and let you know that yes, more workshop related things are still coming. Okay, good news. How will Overwatch 2 impact the workshop? I'm sure it'll come with great technical difficulties, but do you plan to keep the workshop for the Overwatch 2 or even improve it? We don't have any plans to remove it. If anything, we'd like to be able to leverage some of our improved and new features to make it even better. We don't have a full picture of Workshop for launch at the moment, though. Are you going to make more better pre-made AIs for the Workshop in Overwatch 2, or are you just going to remove the pre-made AIs? We've been doing a substantial amount of work in the area of AI for Overwatch 2, which is probably obvious given that it's PvE. Much of these improvements should apply across the game, workshops included, but workshop plans for Overwatch 2 are still quite fluid. Okay, so let's move on to the skins section. Are there more Greek or others mythology-themed skins coming up? Mythology-themed skins are one of my favorite themes also. Okay, that was from Arnold. I realized I've just stopped reading off which developer says this, but it's the Overwatch team, guys. It's the Overwatch team. If like the game director says something big, then yeah, I'll let you know who said it. But let's just carry on. Let's rock on. Over the years, you have released many skins that were only available for limited time through the League store, weekly challenges or collaborations with charities. Are there any plans or thoughts on giving us another chance to earn these skins? On the League store side of things, we are considering bringing back some of the Overwatch League skins from years past. Personally, I'm missing the Atlantic All-Stars Mercy skin, and I want that. So that was from the director of Overwatch League. Have you ever considered a random skin option similar to the random option for highlight intros? We have looked at this. If we were to do it, it would likely be completely random because we're not sure that's exactly what players want. Did I just say that? What I meant to say was that players might want the ability to just pick from a certain subset of skins, such as all their legendaries or their 4 favorites. It also wouldn't change each time a player spawned for technical reasons. Why does Funky Batiste's belt buckle say gravy? It says GRVY and it's supposed to mean groovy. I always thought it meant groovy, not gravy. What? Anyway, gravy is amazing. Anyway, artistically and technically, what has been the most challenging skin to make so far? Okay, this might be a good one. Let's do it. Technically, it's always a challenge to make skins for our more complex heroes. D.Va, Bastion, Wrecking Ball, and Ashe. Penguin May was also really hard. We had to do a lot to make her head work. Artistically, there are tons of examples, but a recent one that comes to mind is I'm going to completely butcher this, Polonistia Zarya. This is the recent one from Archives event. The inspiration for that skin is the Russian Bogatari warriors. Again, sorry, I butchered it. Who wear a very specifically onion-shaped helmet. We explored helmeted and non-helmeted versions, but ultimately chose the one we found more appealing. Choosing between appeal and accuracy to the reference is constantly a struggle and can be very subjective, but I like how the skin turned out. The most challenging skin for me was the Echo's MVP Fleta skin. We don't usually make skins that are super asymmetrical due to tech and art constraints. That was one of the biggest hurdles that we had to go through in making that skin, but I think it turned out great. What was your favourite skin to design? I loved working on Toxic Roadhog. It was a collaboration with one of our senior character modelers, Niles Doubleday. It was fun to see his vision for the skin and translate it to a concept. Making the float in school head work was difficult, but worth it. As character art director, I don't have much time as I used to work on skins, but that's one from recent memory that I enjoyed a lot. So there you go, that's Arnold's title. He's character art director. Do you take gold guns into consideration when designing new skins? Is there any chance of getting more skins for my girl where she isn't wearing sleeves? For every hero, we have certain guidelines we follow for which parts of their look to keep and which to change. For certain things like Moira's sleeves are things that we try to keep as much as possible to maintain her silhouette. Another example of this is Reaper's trench coat. I think we've only removed that shape a couple of times. That being said, I hear you on the desire to see your golden guns more and will consider it more going forward. Will the new Overwatch hero looks come out as the default look of the characters in Overwatch 1, or will they be like an exclusive skin for the look of Overwatch 1 players? The new look of the heroes will be the default look in Overwatch 2. Your skins from Overwatch 1 will carry over and the new looks won't affect them. On behalf of all Symmetra players, why has she been getting ignored in terms of legendary event skins? I promise you an awesome Symmetra skin is on its way. Any chance to get a Symmetra... What is with these Symmetra questions? Any chance to get a Symmetra victory pose to show her golden gun? She doesn't have any. We're on it. What piece of concept art do you like the most, and what character was the most fun to try and design? Thank you and happy birthday, Overwatch. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed working on the Roadhog Overwatch League San Francisco Shock Championship skin. I thought that it came out great with all of the fire special effects and the molten metal chains for his hook. My favourite skin so far is the next Widowmaker skin that will be out there in the near future. Happy anniversary. Ooh, a bit of a tease on a Widow skin there. Maybe a Pashimari Bastion. I'd love to make a silly Pashimari skin for every hero if they allow me. You are the creator of the Pashimari. I love Pashimari. Pashimaris are the best. Thank you for bringing more light into this world. So this is talking to Kang, who is, he made the Pashimaris. Thank you. Glad you like them. It means a lot to me. Please spare some of your love for Yakimon, that weird sausage thingamajiggy. That's the leek thing. That I call it like a leek. Well, it's holding a leek. It's like a sausage holding a leek. I don't know. I hate that thing. I actually hate it for more reasons than you'll ever know. Maybe some of you guys can remember actually why I hate that thing. Anyway, I digress. Are we going to get the Deadlock novel skin for Ashe in the future? Sounds like a good idea, says Arnold Sang. How much money do I have to give you to let us see the full design now? A lot. Joking aside though, stay tuned. We'll have something to show you soon. Okay, so those are all the skin related questions we've got. All right, we're going to move on now to system related questions. Are you planning to revamp the endorsement system where the decay doesn't trigger simply because you're on a losing streak and get no votes? We are planning to do an update on the endorsement system in the future, so it's great hearing your feedback on this. To clarify one element on the system, you won't really decay if you don't play for a week or so. You naturally decay a certain amount when you play a game based on your current endorsement level. With higher endorsement levels, decaying faster and requiring you to earn more endorsements per game. That's what makes higher endorsements levels harder to get. Aaron said recently that they were looking to announce something big for Overwatch 1. What is a rough estimate on when we can hear news about this new feature? We have several exciting things coming to Overwatch. As far as rough estimates go, one large feature will be announced somewhere in the time frame of between soon and really soon, and that's from Aaron Keller, and that's what I opened the video with. Have you considered adding a ping-like system into the game? We've definitely considered this. In fact, we have a prototype of it running internally right now. We don't make a habit of promising things to players until they are actually announced, and I'm not going to break that tradition right now. I'm sure I'll blow it at some point in this AMA. But it is something that we are excited about as a team and are working through issues currently, Aaron Keller. And again, that's what I opened the video with. Any alternative ways to getting golden guns, like points for a win in quick play, even some 2 to 3 per win, or a currency price like 30k currency for a gun? We have no plans for providing them as rewards outside of earning them in competitive play. That's from Scott Mercer. of course, I mean, we know as well that Jeff hated Golden Guns. I think Scott Mercer hated Golden Guns. I think he said that in the other AMA they held with content creators. But yeah, like Golden Guns are just pretty much going away, I think. So yeah. Matchmaking is always a waiting. Sorry, let me start that again. Matchmaking is always a waiting of queue time. But, oh, I see what they're saying here. Okay. Matchmaking is always a waiting of queue time versus MMR range / team balancing. Would it be possible for users to put their own preference of this balance for themselves? We're unlikely to ever add this. My instincts were that this would add a lot of complexity and probably not be as helpful as one would hope. I spoke a bit with an engineer on the team who is the most knowledgeable about our matchmaking system. He noted that there are a lot of factors that contribute to matchmaking that are outside of a single person's control. For example, in role queue, the amount of roles in queue are the dominant factor for matchmaking time. Also, the time of day and how active your particular region is at that time of play is a big part in what matches can be made. Adding a feature like this is also unpredictable. There are likely to be knock-on effects that we'd have to work through. It's tricky if many players set the slider to match quickly. Maybe the preferred quality players would never get a match. If we decided to eventually pull them in, that would be a poor experience since it wouldn't match your expectations based on the slider. A key rule to matchmaking is when you introduce constraints in any way, even if they're meant to be helpful, you generally increase matchmaking time. The matchmaker is by far one of our most complex systems we maintain. We really appreciate ideas and feedback, even if we don't directly go through with a particular suggestion. Special thanks to Alex from our server team for helping me get some detail on this answer. Will there ever be a free model viewing system where we can zoom in and out on characters to appreciate the fine detail on our skins? I assume you mean the free camera system. That's a cool idea. Why no backflipping or pauses in backflipping? Why no backfilling or pauses in competitive? There's no backfilling because we're pretty sure no one would want to do it. If you ever backfill in a game and lose shortly afterwards, you're not happy. If we allow players to backfill without consequences to their SR, it's giving a team license to throw or act negatively. There simply is not a lot of great options here. As far as pauses, and I think you're asking about pauses due to disconnects and leaves, we have to consider cases where players might abuse the rules in an attempt to harass someone or waste people's time. The best way to try and minimize leavers is not to provide any kind of outside motivation for them to occur. We're never going to be completely leave free, but due to internet outages, personal emergencies, random acts of chaos by a cat, we just want to make sure and minimize them as much as possible. Is there a reason for the minimum draw scenario on Assault and Hybrid maps? Ooh, this is a funky one. Yes, it's because a lot of players would not think it would be fair for a team to complete an Assault map with 5 minutes left, and a team that completes it with no time left to have a result where the team that had no time left can go on to win. We had to draw the line somewhere, and we drew it at a minute because it felt like the minimum time required to have a decent shot at taking 33% of the first control point. The rules also exist as they are to try and avoid anti-dramatic or what happened endings that aren't understood. If we handled Escort in the same way, in the same scenario, we'd be asking a team to defend the payload for 5 minutes and prevent it from moving at all, or come close with a 33% minimum mark on payload, which could create ties, which we also want to avoid. So we increase each team's time up to a minimum of 1 minute, which again is a good amount of time to allow for a decent team fight and movement of the payload. This then creates a dramatic and fair ending to the game. Is there some sort of PvP arcade mode that will allow players to use all the hero talent tree's abilities? This could be really fun and I'd love to do it, but none of the talents are being designed with PvP balance in mind, so it could get a little out of control. If we were to introduce a mode that included these in the arcade, it wouldn't focus on the competitive nature of the game. Also, talents in tiny Overwatch games would be amazing. Aaron Keller. Are you planning on taking steps to reduce the number of Smurfs? We're definitely looking to combat what I would refer to as abusive alt accounts, i.e. players who repeatedly create new accounts just so they can play against lesser skilled opponents. Part of this is improving the matchmaker's ability to determine your skill even faster, detecting those that repeatedly abuse alt accounts and taking action against them, and looking at ways to limit access to additional accounts. We can't go into all the details here, but it's something that's being actively worked on. Do remember that many Smurfs are just friends who want to play together but aren't of the same skill. The matchmaker doesn't simply average their SR together when considering how to matchmake them, and it's also good to remember that the other player might not be a Smurf at all. They might just have gotten a lucky streak of headshots. Skill is not a static thing, it ebbs and flows, and we all have our moments where we feel like gods of Overwatch, and other moments I can't hit a player to save my life. So there is legitimate reasons to have alternate accounts. Many people have them for different social circles, etc. So we have to be careful here. Yeah, that's probably the best answer I've seen from anyone at Blizzard on Smurf accounts, because it's very easy to sit there, isn't it, and go, oh my god, this Smurf is ruining the game, what the hell. Maybe it is just a player who's playing out of their mind in that one game. And God knows I see enough of this when people send me clips for Overanalyzed. It's generally their best game, even though I tell them not to do that. It's like, yeah, look at this, and I review the game and I'm like, wow, this is a platinum game, but this player is playing like, I don't know, a high diamond player. What's going on here? Well, it's their best game they've ever had. So yeah, like you've got to always be careful with that. Will there be a beta? Almost certainly yes. If I knew when, I couldn't tell you. If I told you, I'd have to kill you. But Aaron Keller is our resident secret leaker, so you might have to give him a try. The confirmation there of a beta, which, yeah, fair enough. Beta, whatever you want to call it. Any major changes to the game engine, visual rendering, texturing as thus far? Yes, we've had a lot of changes to the game engine. Many optimizations, better lighting, and many new features have been added. PvE has also allowed us to look much more at how our environments tell our story, so we've added many features that will help with that. In addition, since the hardware landscape has changed a lot since Overwatch was launched, we're taking the opportunity, both on the artist side and the technical side, to beef up our high-end features and assets. Yeah, good stuff. Any hopes for 120 tick servers in the future? Ooh, I like this question. We do use 120 tick for the Overwatch League, but right now we're not seriously considering them for the main live game. We find the most significant benefit of playing on 120 tick comes only when combined with all players in matchmaking having excellent network quality and extremely low latency. I'll never say never, it could happen, but not currently planned. So tick rate, the very basic explanation of this, it's how fast or how often the game server is basically sending you information and how often you're sending it information. The higher this is, the more bandwidth it will consume. So if you think you're hosting tons of games because you're running Overwatch, this could be massively expensive. So I think there's also a very heavy cost implication here when it comes to whether Blizzard would ever implement that. But the fact is, the higher the tick, the better the accuracy of the game, almost certainly. So you always want a higher tick rate every single time. One of the things that we often spoke about in the past is on the LAN client of Overwatch, where you've got 0 ping. And this is not necessarily tick rate. I guess you could throw tick rate into this. But basically, it's an ideal scenario. You're playing against people who are sitting a few meters away from you on the Overwatch League stage. Winston's Tesla cannon sounded amazing because it was basically... it wasn't registering hits more often, but it's really hard to explain. But essentially, the game is always better with less ping and more tick rate. So let's move on to maps now, because I completely blundered the end of that systems section. What are the PvP map types for Gothenburg and India? Not Scott, but I'll answer it all the same. I don't think we've officially announced PvP maps for either of those locations. However, if we were to make maps for them, I think it would be a great idea if they were built for some super exciting, as of yet unannounced game mode. That was Aaron Keller. Called out that it was showed at BlizzCon 2019. And then, so Aaron got called out basically that, hey, these maps were shown because, yeah, they were. And he went, oh, shoot, you might be right. Waiting for Brain to come up with something intelligent to say. So, yeah, those two maps are a new game mode and they're going to announce it at some point. More game modes is good, right? Just wish they were in Overwatch. Maybe that's what the big feature is. They're just going to go, here's pushing the game, although I doubt that. Anyway, let's move on. What's going to happen to 2CP? Will all the maps be reworked for different modes, or is it getting a major readjustment? Each Overwatch game mode requires very different maps. Reworking the original 2CP maps into another game mode would probably be just as hard, if not harder, than building a whole new map from scratch with that particular art kit. As far as the future is concerned, we've talked about giving it a place in the arcade, and we don't have plans to build any future 2CP maps. Aaron Keller. Now you're going to notice a lot of these will be Aaron Keller answering the questions, because this is what he is. He's a map designer. He's also the game director, but he is a map designer. He builds maps. He's built loads of stuff for other games as well, especially World of Warcraft. If you guys are fans of that, he built pretty much every major city in that game. And of course, he made King's Row. So I mean, yeah, that was probably it. This totally isn't the right. This isn't true at all. But it just makes me laugh. Can you imagine, like, Jeff leaves Overwatch, and then it's like, we need a new director. Who do we get? And they're like, well, who made King's Row? That guy did. Promote him. That's not how it happened, but it would be so funny if he did. As a renowned map designer, because we all love King's Row, what are some key points you look at when designing a map for Overwatch, and some pitfalls a new map designer might need to avoid? Two of the biggest mistakes that people can make when designing Overwatch maps is to make them too complicated and make them too large. Overwatch gameplay is really fast. People need to make decisions based off a lot of complex interactions very quickly. The busier the environment and the rest of the game is, the harder this is to do. One of the last changes we made to King's Row was closing one of the windows over point A. There used to be two side by side. One extra opening was just enough to where players couldn't possibly focusing on dangerous areas while resulting in them feeling overwhelmed. The community talks a lot about power creep, healing creep, etc., but not many people mention size creep. I think over the years, Overwatch maps have grown larger. I think the opening area of Junkertown, when we have too many spaces like this, our core gunplay begins to break down. We're really investigating map size with Overwatch 2. As far as what to look for, this is a little more hand-wavy and gut-based. An Overwatch map just feels right when you look at it. Most of the time, people wonder how we make spaces for individual heroes to feel good, and we do put time and thought into this, but our maps are designed with a lot of intentionality and affordances built into them. What that means is when a player turns a corner, they can very quickly recognize where they are supposed to go, what the map will probably be laid out like in areas that she can't see, and what type of threats and gameplay they can immediately expect to engage in a team fight, a tank, a flank, etc. If you're looking for advice in how to progress as a level designer, my number one is to pick a game or games, study them, and then just endlessly build maps for them. It's a skill and it's something that you'll get better at with time and practice. Cool. I mean, I suppose there, the sort of admission that Junkertown's too big. The first point of Junkertown is way too big. So yeah, we probably won't ever see that again. I mean, if Aaron Keller's the game director, well, he's not going to allow that to pass through anymore, is he? He's just going to go, no, that's too big. So yeah, smaller, tighter, more detailed maps for Overwatch 2. But one interesting thing to note is, and this has been said on the developer live stream and in the other AMA as well, is with the game moving to 5v5, map cover becomes a lot more powerful. You've lost the tank, right? So you need to hide more. So you need more cover. So these maps are probably going to be more intricate, more opportunities to hide. You're going to have to pay attention to what you're doing as well. Pay attention to line of sight, not just YOLO in like you do right now. Because you can argue that if you're playing like a McCree or a soldier and you're inside the team blob, you don't really care about where you need to be because you've got a Reinhardt in front of you probably with a barrier, and then you maybe got a D.Va as well, and it's like, well, or maybe you've got two barrier tanks, a Sigma and a Reinhardt. It's like, well, I've got a load of protection here, I can just do what I like. Of course, that means you're firing into barriers and it doesn't feel great, but yeah, a lot of pros and cons there. Were there any theories of making certain unreleased areas of Blizzard's world, Zerg area, Orgrimmar, etc., into deathmatch areas, or for other plans that were later discarded? Blizzard World was envisioned as part of Irvine, California from its inception. The team constantly talks about making new areas of this map because it is near and dear to our hearts. However, This was one of, if not the most, challenging map our art team has ever created, so we've shied away from adding onto it. Interesting. So pretty much the most complex map they've made. I mean, it is a really good looking map though, isn't it? It is really, yeah, I do like Blizzard World. Also on maps as well, don't forget that we have King's Row was shown to have extra areas added to it for the PvE stuff. So we know the maps are being expanded in certain ways, and so it's going to be interesting to see that going forward into Overwatch 2, isn't it? All right, let's move on. Should we still expect Paris and Horizon maps back in Overwatch 1, or you keep them all for Overwatch 2? We were in the middle of reworking parts of both Horizon and Paris when we made the decision to move away from the Assault game mode. Those projects are currently on hold and probably won't be restarted. So, no. We're not remaking those maps. They're dead and they are gone. Oh, dear. Right, okay. If you guys are still with me, you're absolute heroes. We've been going for a long time. I told you there was a lot of questions. We're getting there, though. All right, we're going to move on to some console-related questions. Why does the Recall animated short play whenever we boot up Overwatch on console? Is this an oversight or intentional? To hide some loading screens, could we maybe get the option to not have it play? I didn't know this was a thing. I mean, I don't play on console, so I wouldn't know about this. The animated short will play on all versions, but on PC we only play it once. We track if it was shown in the settings, and on console versions, this is before the user logs in and we don't have access to any saved setting information at that time. We intentionally show the movie this early because we're loading core assets during this time. We agree it'd be nice to be able to skip it. I spoke with our lead engine programmer a bit just now, and it's something we'll look at, though I can't promise we'll be able to do it because it would require moving where it plays and reviewing asset loading times. So yeah, that's a good answer, good question, a good answer. So it's basically there to hide loading screen. So yeah, rather watch Winston on a loading screen, but I suppose if you watched it 1,000 times, it's just getting a bit old, isn't it? Will there be cross-platform progression? Oh yeah, these are questions that I like, implemented into Overwatch 2 between PC, Xbox, PlayStation and Switch. I mean, of course, let's do it. We're pretty excited about the possibilities of cross-play and cross-progression, but we don't have anything to announce today. However, given the additional complexities of cross-progression, it would probably make most sense to tackle cross-play first and then explore progression as a potential add-on if we go this route. The difficulty centers around how we track entitlements and policy concerns with platform manufacturers. There are also a lot of technical concerns, but most are manageable with a good amount of work. It's all feasible, just a lot more ducks to get in a row. And unfortunately, the more groups involved, the more complicated something becomes, and cross-progression just gets more complicated in that regard. Yeah, so pretty much saying, look, we want this in the game, but Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, there's a lot of issues. So yeah, the thing is, like, they control PC, right, with their Battle.net platform, so that's great. But on Xbox, on I just need the desk. I don't know if you guys heard that. That actually killed me. Oh my god, I'm trying to move through it. Oh lord, it's like when you smash your funny bone in your elbow. But I've just done it in my knee. What? But yeah, crossplay, they want to do it, but it's yeah, it probably ain't gonna happen. Which oh, sorry, not crossplay, cross-platform progression. Sorry, not crossplay. Crossplay is something they should definitely do, but that can only obviously work like you could put the PS5 and the PlayStation and the Xbox together, right? You maybe even be able to put them into the PC matchmaking for PvE possibly, but you definitely wouldn't want the Switch playing with PC, right? Or you wouldn't want the Switch playing with Xbox probably, because of just the sheer performance difference. All right, let's move on. Is the game still planned to release in the Nintendo Switch? And if it is, what compromises are having to be made? I expect that they would be mainly in PvE. Good question. As hardware has advanced since the launch of Overwatch, we are extending the Overwatch 2 engine with more high-end features. However, we're also working hard to make sure all of our platforms get the best experience, even in PvE. Switch is a little more challenging than some, and we have to make some compromises there. For that reason, some of the higher-end visual enhancements might not be visible there. We'll focus on making sure all of the gameplay-related features get in first, and then accentuate with additional features as much as possible. We know what I'd also say here as well. I think there's a Switch Pro coming out fairly soon, and I think surely it's going to have a better graphical fidelity on it. So maybe that's why they're not saying anything. Because game development companies would know about new hardware coming out, surely. And there's been a lot of rumors about that anyway. So maybe if we get a souped up Switch, then hey, we do get the new features of Overwatch 2 on it. Will Overwatch 2 launch on all platforms day one? Specifically, will it hit Nintendo Switch the same day as PC, Xbox, and PlayStation? And will it run on both the previous gen and newer gen consoles? As a live ops engineer, I loved shipping Overwatch on all platforms and in all regions at the same time. It was a huge challenge that was very exciting. It's definitely our goal to do the same for Overwatch 2, but of course, I can't promise that it won't hit any blockers that prevent us from doing that. Will the PS5 get an official 120 FPS patch before Overwatch 2 arrives? We don't have any plans to do so at the moment. We would have to invest a non-trivial amount of time to upgrade original Overwatch to recognise and separately treat the PS5. It involves changing the platform SDK. Instead, we're taking that time to focus on making Overwatch 2 the best it can be on next generation consoles. So I think, yeah, that's kind of a little bit frustrating, isn't it? Because if you're playing on a PS5, I mean, it's a powerhouse of a console. Like, you want a high FPS, right? 60 FPS is fine, but you want 120, right? Give me 120. I mean, it could easily do it, surely. But yeah, like, if they have to do some sort of change that we're not aware of, and it isn't simply just allowing it to run faster, then okay, fair enough, right? So let's move on to some lore-related questions. Is there any clarification on the family that Reaper apparently had, as mentioned by Anna in the Bastet short story? And is this the same family that Reaper was stalking in the Reflections comic, which was apparently not chosen at random? The family that Reaper is stalking in the Reflections comic is indeed his family. Oh lord, actual lore. And not just random people on the street. I think there is still a lot to explore about Reaper's story, and we're currently working on some lore for him that I'm pretty excited about. Ooh. Has there ever been a plan to implement a system that could entice and better educate current, new and returning players about the Overwatch universe? We're looking at this from a few angles. The first is how to include more of this content inside of Overwatch 2 itself, either through storytelling in the game or through other systems that could contain and deliver this lore, whether it's past Overwatch or current Overwatch 2 story. The second is looking at ways of bringing people up to speed with media outside of the game. Both are really exciting and I can't wait for people to see it. Ooh, okay, hang on a minute. The second is looking at ways of bringing people up to speed with media outside of the game. Both are really exciting and I can't wait for people to see it. Can I come in here with like, yeah, Netflix? Everyone else has got a Netflix series. You know what I would watch? Do you remember the Doomfist animated short? Where I think he's fighting in Singapore against Tracer and Winston. Give me an Overwatch animation in that style. That is sick. I mean, it's obviously anime, right? But it's just the style of it is so good. I think that'd be great. Also, Genji's in it as well. I forgot about Genji. Okay, let's move on. Is McCree white and just very tan, or is he mixed race or something? McCree is white and just very tan. We know there is a lot of sci-fi charm in Overwatch, but has it often been difficult to explain some of the game's techniques? Scientifically, for example, if the dragons of Hanzo and Genji are not magic, what could they be? Magic is a tricky word that means different things to different people. That being said, not everything in Overwatch can or needs to be explained by technology. Fair enough. Can we expect the comics to come back? We are working on more comics. Okay. Well, I mean, yeah. So maybe that's what the Reaper stuff is in the comic. All right, let's move on to art and design. I'd love to hear from Jeff or Scott on how the underlying philosophy of how Overwatch has changed over the years and into Overwatch 2. How have, if at all, the objectives for what you want players to feel in-game changed going into this next era of sorts for Overwatch? For Overwatch 1, most of the philosophy changes have been small tactical changes through the game's life, rather than large sweeping changes. The biggest sweeping change to philosophy were when we went to a single hero limit and then later to role lock. At its heart, the game has always been about super over-the-top heroes that are simple to understand but have a lot of depth in gameplay, especially when combined with other heroes on your team. When making new heroes or changing old ones, it's a constant fight for us internally to try and make sure the heroes are simple and focused from a gameplay perspective. This has been gotten harder over time as we add new heroes and push to keep every hero feeling unique at the same time. For Overwatch 2, this core philosophy is still the same, but we're looking at some of these things in somewhat of a new light. We're still pushing hard to keep heroes simple and deep, but there are some specifics we've changed, such as more aggressive tank play, which can change how we make tank hero roles. I love how real-world cultures play such a huge role in the design of the game, and I wanted to know how that plays into making the design of the characters, but also if it affects the way that they play in the game. I can't really speak to if it affects the way they play, but real-world cultures are indeed a big influence when designing the characters. In the early days, I used the analogy of fighting games a lot when envisioning the roster for Overwatch. How in fighting games, you could always feel the flavour of a character's culture in their appearance and fighting style, and how you travel all over the world to different cities to fight it out. Sorry, not sure if that answers your question. I find it hard to relate to any of the heroes in Overwatch due to their age. Will there ever be a child playable character? I'd love someone like Shotaro from Gigantor. I have no idea what that means. I think we're unlikely to put a child playable character into Overwatch given the core gameplay of the game. We really love Aoife though, and it's possible we continue to see younger lore characters incorporated in the same way she is. So, I mean, weird question. Basically, you can't put children in the game and then shoot them in the head with a gun. No. Favourite piece of concept art for your character or map that didn't quite make it the cut, and what made it special to you? Okay, so this is answered by two devs. So Aaron Keller is the first answer, then we get Kang coming in for the second and third. There was this piece featuring a giant underwater walking machine. It looked like it had a city or at least a bunch of buildings in it. I started calling it Galapagos for some reason, and have wanted to build an underwater map set in some villain's lair off the coast of Galapagos ever since. I think we even had a paper map of this location early in Overwatch development. It was going to be Escort, if I remember correctly. That was Aaron Keller. So you know what? I can see what that is. I can remember the concept art from Titan in my head of Galapagos, and it looks amazing. It's like a big, massive dome under the sea. Do it. Do it! My favourite concept art that didn't make the cut was the legendary version of the Pashimari Roadhog skin. What? There was a legendary version of this. We decided to do an epic version of the skin instead due to time constraints. As the creator of Pashimari, this is great. Kang is crazy. I'm always down to cram more Pashimari into the game. Excuse me, there was a legendary version of that skin. I mean, we're going to need to see that. There's a concept for a character called the Omniblade that I did during early development. The hero design of it ended up becoming Hanzo, and the look of it eventually morphed into Sombra. But I really dug the original sketch. It's in Sombra section of the Art of Overwatch book. You know what? That's actually it's a really good book. That is the Art of Overwatch. I've got that. I think the Art of Overwatch 2 is coming out at the end of this year as well. I believe. Maybe it's out now. I don't know. I think it's the end of this year, right? I don't know. Dates and times, don't ever quote me on them recently, guys, because I mean, everything has just become a mess in my head. What's something new that the art team is looking forward to working on with Overwatch 2? As a fellow artist, the character redesigns and new maps have me more excited than ever to see what the final game will look like. There's something about creating a version of a place in the real world and replicating it in the Overwatch world that makes me super excited to work on. It's definitely a challenge to implement a huge city into one tiny map, but I feel like we've done a pretty good job so far. How important are architectural and real-world concepts when creating a fantasy universe? Real-world architecture is super important to us when creating a in-game version of the world. For instance, for Hollywood, we had to get specific permission from the city to put the Hollywood sign and the observatory into the map. This quite the same for most of our maps based on real cities. Okay, interesting. I wonder if you had to get permission to put the Houses of Parliament. Or, well, it's not the Houses of Parliament, is it? It's the Palace of Westminster. Basically, Big Ben. Like, I doubt it. I really doubt it. I don't know, but anyway, you never know. You never know. I think you might need permission actually to put Buckingham Palace into something. So if it's a royal residence, then maybe you can't do it. I don't know. What were some abilities that were originally planned for heroes but had to be cut out? We tried and discarded quite a few abilities during development of our heroes. It's a very natural part of the process. Sometimes the idea are better fits to other heroes. Sometimes they just don't work. And we chalk that up to a lesson. Here's one I worked on for Torbjorn. Torbjorn had something we referred to as the Claw Trap that he deployed similar to Widowmaker's Venom Mine. But instead of dealing damage, the trap grabbed a hold of you and prevented the enemy from moving outside of a fixed radius of the trap. You could move freely around next to the trap, but you couldn't move far away until you destroyed the base of the trap. It had some fun moments, as it could do things like stop a charging Reinhardt or prevent Pharah from launching high into the sky, but it really caused a lot of confusion. After a bunch of iteration, we decided to go in a different direction. Well, I didn't know that Torb had a ridiculous claw trap. Oh man. How close have you been to make a really controversial change that barely didn't make it through? How close have you been to making a really controversial change that barely didn't make it through? Other than the bunch of stuff we thrown out on the test server and pulled at the last minute, like Zen's Discord being able to target through barriers, maybe the most significant was Sombra's hero design. For most of her development, she was a support hero instead of a damage hero. In this role, her main goal was to hack every enemy while sneaking around and trying to stay alive. At that time, hacking an enemy was a long duration debuff that reduced their healing and damage output, rather than the short duration high impact debuff it became later. The idea was that she was balanced so that if she successfully got enough hacks on the enemy team, your team would effectively be able to win a 5v6, since she wasn't very good in combat for her team, simply because the debuffs were strong enough to allow for that. This is all fine and good on paper, and it was pretty fun to play her this way, but people just hated getting debuffed in this way. In fact, every time we tried to put this kind of debuff in the game, Wrecking Ball also had it in early development instead of his shield. We got overwhelming feedback that is the most terrible thing we could put into the game. There is something psychologically painful about a minus damage healing output debuff compared to just about any other debuff. It makes it hard for it to find its way into the game in any form. Will we see any more animation by Michael Biancalanca? Oh my god, I have destroyed your name. I'm very sorry, Michael. I don't actually know what this is. Michael is an incredible animator and game developer. He left a permanent mark on the game with the highlight intro system, as well as iconic characters like Zenyatta and countless other great things. He is no longer with Blizzard, but I am sure he's off somewhere making awesome stuff. I'm not actually sure. Hold up, who is Michael? Let's have a look here. Let's go to Google. You gotta love it. Let's do it. Let's Google him. Michael. Okay, so Michael is at Bonfire Studios, which is a spin-off studio from Blizzard, and he is an animator. I'm not entirely sure what he's done with Overwatch, which is kind of bad. But you don't need to know everything every developer's done, because some developers don't want to be out there, in the limelight, and that's fine. I think he's done a bunch of stuff with like Mercy's animations and stuff like that. But yeah, he's with Bonfire Studios now, who have got a ton of ex-Overwatch developers, and I'd imagine they're making something sick. Okay, so we're going to end with a bunch of miscellaneous questions. And once again, massive shout out to Miko over from Overbuff for compiling all of this. It must have taken you ages to do this. Absolute legend. All right, then let's do it. What is the most challenging thing about Overwatch developing? Hang on. Some of these questions are a little bit weird because they've been wrote by a lot of different people, and sometimes I can't read. So let me start again. What is the most challenging thing about developing Overwatch 2 and maintaining Overwatch 1? Really, the biggest thing is how different Overwatch 2 has become and how it's constantly changing. We have to keep in mind how Overwatch 1 is currently playing and what changes we think will be best for it without thinking about how different they already are in Overwatch 2. It's like juggling two different metas and environments, and it's easy to mix them up in my mind or memory sometimes. Oh my lord. What was one of the biggest obstacles you overcame when you started working on Overwatch? The Overwatch team was formed from the ashes of Titan, a much smaller team. While we learned a lot during that development, it certainly was a blow to our confidence, as any setback can be. But the one thing we knew we had from the beginning was each other, and we bonded together extremely well. Getting that confidence back and making it to the success of Overwatch, of the Overwatch announce at BlizzCon, was a big hurdle to overcome. Our trust in one another and the incredibly open and supportive atmosphere we have on the team really enabled us to get over that. Who was the highest SR on the... Oh, I think I know what this is. I think I know who this is. Who has the highest SR on the Blizzard team right now, and how high is that SR? I'm not sure what SR this person is at now, but the highest I'm aware of was around 4,300. We really have a wide range of skill levels on the team. While we do many team-wide playtests, we also have focused playtests for specific skill ranges when necessary. Now, I'm pretty sure this is Josh Noah. He is basically Jeff Goodman's sidekick. That's probably a really bad way to... He's a hero designer like Jeff Goodman. Let's leave it at that. But he is really good at the game. Like, 4,300 SR. Hello? Hello? Who has been your favourite character that has been added to the game these past 5 years, and why? Happy anniversary. Happy anniversary! I love Echo's hero design, both visually and gameplay. Always wanted a hero that could clone or mirror someone else. That was from Kang. And finally, this question: what was the funniest bug behind the scenes? I know this wasn't behind the scenes because it was a live bug, but when I asked our Q&A team for a bug that stood out to them, they linked me this bug. The linked pictures are nightmare fuel, but also absolutely hilarious. Well, let me see what this is. Hang on. Oh, okay. So it's when the characters... Okay, so you know the victory screen at the end of the game? It's when the characters basically took on the victory pose of other heroes. So like Mercy as a Junkrat, for example. It's actually violent to see, and I will not put it on the screen. I refuse to put it on the screen. One that's more behind the scenes: when we first implemented Ashe, if there were any Bobs alive at the end of a match, they would vote on the end of round cards. AI will definitely take over the world someday. I'll take this post as a chance to thank all of our amazing Q&A folks. You're all amazing. All right, guys. Okay, that was a juicy, beefy, over an hour of dev AMA we've gone over there. This was the public AMA that was held on Reddit. This is part of the celebrations for Overwatch's 5th anniversary. Of course, they did show off the PvP live stream, so a lot of that all connects into this. It's a good time to talk about Overwatch 2. I think big takeaways from this are, yeah, sure, there was a lot of specific stuff there, but Overwatch 2 is still a game very much in development, and still a game that's probably a very, 18 months away or something, probably even longer. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see what happens. But, yeah, I'm going to get out of here, guys, because I have literally destroyed my voice these last few days, talking for hours and hours on end. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments below what your favourite answer was to these questions. And, yeah, all right, guys. I'll catch you lovely lot on the next video. Toodaloo.